In today's video, we look at improving the overall tips to improve your board, and this board today is the motor driver board that we've just previously looked at in the past two videos. So what we're looking at is within your designs on how to improve them, and what you should incorporate, and maybe things you should consider doing. First off, we're going to kick off with the designators. As you can see here, and as I've previously mentioned, working with these types of designators in the hundreds region, you get a bit crowded on your board. For example, these things over here. So I had the test points designators removed before, but you could imagine in routing these things could get all over the place. And especially as when you've got a more complicated board. So let's picture this. You're routing in a complex board, you've got 150 components plus on it or something, multi-layers, and you're quite constrained for size. You already have so much to worry about: component placement, routing differential pairs, impedance controls, RF signals, all these types of things, and even it goes further and further along your PCB checklist. Well, this was just a few things to mention. So what if we took away the designators? How much of a cleaner look that would provide? Completely remove the designators here now, and look how clean this looks. A massive step up. And of course the downside to this, you can't see the individual components on what you're placing, but with more compact boards, I think this is something you should really consider doing. As I stated before, it's size constraints, you can't really squish in everything that you want, and I don't really see this as being much of a problem as when you come to debug it or cross-reference schematics, which was the whole point of placing in the hundreds region for designators. But of course this is just something to keep in mind. And when you come to routing these boards, and I assume when you do more complex as you build up, you start to see little things that may annoy you. For example, this one maybe could have been routed a bit better, this could have, and things. So you're wondering, like, what could I improve on? And with so much information going on when you're routing your board and you want to keep things in mind, it helps to declutter that information and removing the things that you don't really need. In this case would be the designators, by doing yourself a massive favor by doing so. It was also mentioned in a previous comment about the silk screen on vias, which is a very, very good point. This kind person has said that vias would take a whole lot of your silk screen, so your designators or silk screen around the components or extra writing will be an issue. In this case, I do have tented vias over here, and I speak about how you can implement these tented vias in a previous video, but essentially they're classed to an IFEC 4761 via type, and you can select them and you get a different type via. So what I've seen before is that in some cases the silk screen can be printed onto them. Some of them, as the comment suggests, that it will not print, and you'll just be left with a giant hole in the middle. And in some other cases the text would be just all frizzled up and it'd be very difficult to read. So I think the best solution here would be to consult your board manufacturer, see what type of service they do, what was the outcome. They could give you some examples and what the capabilities that they can or cannot do. Place identities for your connectors. So in this board here, we do not have any description whatsoever. What do these things do? What are the connectors doing? What is actually going on? And I think a nice thing that was there to be added is the connectors. So I'm going to add these all in. I'm going to show you the difference. So you see me there just playing around with all the things and whatever, like just changing it for however you want it, however you want your text to look and such, like this. But what I'm trying to illustrate the point here is that you would want something, especially if it's a hobbyist board or whatever. It's like even for my own work, for my own boards at work, I tend to label things that give the user some clarity, some indication. What do these buttons do? What do these connectors do? So for example, I had SD cards. I was implementing SD cards. I would write SD cards and then I would draw a silk screen of where the SD card would sit. I had a cellular modem. I would say this is a SIM card connector. I had a serial output for debugging, so I say, okay, so this is the TX, RX, things like that to give indication. So I could put something here, JTAG. But I hope this illustrates the point of what I'm getting at and to what you might want to consider implementing in your designs. And I find this really helpful, and in a certain way it can even be more aesthetic to place them. And you can, of course, this is just a rough example. I'm just trying to illustrate the point here. But you can really take your boards to the next level and make them stand out. As what's the point? You know, if you make an awesome board that works, is functional, why not try to make it as good looking as possible? It's a form of art at the end of the day. And I think I've mentioned this before, but on the topic of silkscreen and designators and such, I like to add these body components. I do apologize, I think I did speak about this in the previous videos, and I like to say it again. But I like to add these little silkscreen things around here to give a brief component outline of what the component is going to look like and how much body space it's going to take. Of course, capacitors and things I don't really tend to put in, but polarity markings, buttons, what the huge mechanical body, ICs, how much space is it actually going to take? And this is really quite important for you to include something like this, or I don't know, like some sort of keep out layer, essentially. And I say this because I actually have a funny story for this one. For this part, I had a battery connector, one of them coin cell ones, and I left the component on the board. I was finished for the day. I was on my way back home, and you know, I was quite satisfied with the day. Hard job, well done. And I came back in the next day, started routing and everything, and I totally forgot about the size of the coin cell battery. I totally forgot about it. And then I came back in, and I ended up with this board. I came in for a design review, and my boss was just like, "Oh, I hope this is a vertical, a vertical mount one, like not a body one." It's like, "Oh no, it's one of them circle ones." And he just looked at it, "You really think you're going to get that mounted?" And then I realized the mistake that I've done. I haven't put a silkscreen layer or keep out layer to keep me informed. And that we tend to forget these types of things, so add that silk screen. The last one for this would be a PCB identifier within a hobby or workplace or whatever you do when it comes to PCB design. Place a unique identifier for the board and what that board is. This is extremely helpful with traceability. So right now for this board, I do not have one, and if you could imagine if I send this board out, let's take it, for example, let's say if it was a project of yours. You send this board out, this is the first revision whatsoever. You send this board out, get made, and you keep making these changes and so on and so forth, and you haven't added anything onto the board. You put it inside a box, you put it where you want it to be. I don't know if you have a project container or whatever it is. You put it inside the box, and then you realize, oh, which board is my latest one? Which one is the most up-to-date one? What are the changes I've made? How do I find something like this? What is it? And this is where the form and traceability comes in, where all your boards should have a unique name identifier. So this one could be motor driver board rev 1. It could be something as simple as that. It can just be placed anywhere on the board, something that your colleagues, or whoever knows that it's a standard format that you all know of. And then you can see, okay, this is the first revision. Maybe we shouldn't use this board. There's already a second revision out. We can see what changes has been made. And along with this, since we're on the topic of traceability, a document should go on with it. This is how I usually do it. Place along and make a document of it. What changes have been made between the differences of revision 1 and revision 2. And so it's all easy, because again, you will forget when it comes down to it. You think like, oh, I've changed this, but what about other people when they come to look for your board? What about other people when they see it? They want to know what changes. Why have you done these changes? What has came out of that review? And this is why it's really helpful for everyone to look at this and understand where you're coming from. So like I said, just place a motor, like I said before, place something there that helps you identify with this board. And overall, that's all I have for this form of topic. I'm hoping to get this board built in. I'm gonna have a look at it a few times, sure there's something to correct, because it's always good to have a little revision. Hopefully get this board assembled, and due to my last mistake of trying to build it myself, I'm not going to go down that route again. But yes, hoping for all of that, and we'll see you to the future.